I just thought I would catch you up on the last thing I read, which was The Dragon's Betrothed Volume 2. I did a video, I think it was part of like a wrap-up that mentioned the first volume of this manga, but I will give you a summary of the story and then talk a little bit about the second installment. So, The Dragon's Betrothed is the story of an author named Chiharu. He lives in Tokyo, but he has returned to the little town that he grew up in. His grandmother raised him, and I guess he's kind of facing some burnout and trying to get away. And while there, he meets a man named Rin, who it turns out is a water god, like he can turn into like a water dragon. And there's this legend about him granting wishes in exchange for a bride, and it turns out that Chiharu's grandmother has promised Chiharu to Rin as a bride to have her wish granted, I think. Her wish is not clear. The assumption is she wished for some kind of success with her own writing because Chiharu's grandmother was also an author. But I have this inkling that maybe her wish was more like for Chiharu to be happy or loved or something along those lines. Anyway, obviously Chiharu is not super enthusiastic about the idea of having an arranged marriage with this random guy / god, so he resists. At the end of the first volume, though, Chiharu has been attacked by a kitsune spirit, and Rin has, arrived to defend him. And Volume 2 necessarily picks up there and gets more serious. The first volume's a little bit like fun and frivolous as, Rin attempts to win Chiharu over, and Chiharu resists. The second volume is more serious as Rin feels very guilty that Chiharu has been injured in this fight, and he uses his powers to heal Chiharu, even though healing is... Crowley. Even though healing is not a power that he possesses, which means he has to kind of tap into... Crowley. Excuse me a moment. Anyway, so Rin is, he has to kind of tap into some other, godly powers. He's got to kind of drain himself in order to heal Chiharu. And, so then he starts to fade, and Chiharu is, concerned for Rin's health, and then the the explicit label begins to make sense because the manga gets very explicit that in order to sustain his human form and not fade entirely from existence, Rin needs, a little Marvin Gaye, I will say, and it's a manga, so it's visually explicit. There's a very long... Oh my god, this cat. There's a very long, interlude of their first time together, and, and then the question becomes whether Chiharu eventually does want to join Rin in his spring. So to be fully his bride, Chiharu would have to give up his human life and go live in this spring of water with Rin. And he's not quite prepared to do that, but he is kind of well, how often do we have to sleep together for you not to, disappear? Because he's also, realizing he cares for Rin, and he doesn't want him to just go away. So they're trying to come up with a solution that would allow possibly Rin to stay human. My guess, and so small spoilers, I guess, but not really. It's just, this is me conjecturing. Since Rin's powers are tied up in his legend, and so there's a lot of talk about how, oh, but it's a minor legend, and so he doesn't have that much power and all this kind of thing. Chiharu, as a writer, would need to write him some other kind of legend / story that would give him greater power or make it so that he can't or doesn't have to, always be in the water. I don't know. That is like my conjecture. But anyway, I gave it 4 stars. It's fine. The cat. He's throwing himself against the door now. He wanted out. Now he wants in. But yeah, it's fine. And I mean, if you like explicit yaoi boys love type stuff, then the first volume, it was like it had the explicit content label, and then there was kind of like nothing explicit in it. So it was kind of like, well, is it just explicit because it's gay, and so they shrink wrap it. But I guess the idea is that eventually the story does get explicit, so they want to just label the whole thing as that. And that makes sense, start as you mean to go on, as they say. So yeah, I mean, I enjoy it. I'll keep reading it. I really like the art style. The story here got a little kind of muddy. There's a grandma goddess character, Lady Inara, I think was her name, Inari. Anyway, she, she's kind of in there, like, stirring the pot. The little kitsune who originally attacked Chiharu, like, gets admonished and now is this kind of sad, lonely, little grumpy thing, fox creature who gets like attacked by crows. But so there's a lot of cute little side stories going on. It isn't like the most compelling manga I've ever read. The character development here is not super deep or original, I would say. The story is pretty tropey, pretty much of its type, but if you like this type of thing, it's, spot on. Yeah, I mean, like I said, I'll keep reading it for the time being. It's not, but it lacks some of the subtleties, I guess, that I enjoy, like in Toya and Yukito and Cardcaptor Sakura, Seishiro and Subaru. I think Clamp just does that kind of thing really well. But this is good. And yeah, again, just warning for fully explicit content in this second volume. It comes to fruition, as it were. And that's it. Still reading the Heaven Official's Blessing. And I'm enjoying that. And that's kind of all I'm reading right now. Yeah. And that's that. So let me know if you've read The Dragon's Betrothed, what you thought of it, or if you can recommend any other manga you think I would like based on the ones that I do already enjoy. Old, new, I don't mind how recent they are. Some of my favorites are from the 90s, so, and I still go back and reread those, even though it's very different now. Yeah. And in the meantime, take care.